One of the main things that made me fall in love with Ableton Live when I first started using it was what I can do with samples. I can take a piece of audio, pitch it around, reverse it, use all the different warp modes in different ways, and achieve all sorts of sounds. So today I want to walk you through how I build a track in Ableton Live from start to finish using nothing but samples. Let's go. This video is sponsored by TrackLib. More about them later in the video. So diving right into the session, you can see I'm starting with a fully blank session. Something I like to do at the very beginning of this process is kind of land on what style I'm going to make first. So I think today we're going to make just like a lo-fi kind of vibey song because I recently got a sample pack from Mondo Loops. Shout out Mondo Loops. The Chill Lo-Fi Drum Kit Volume 1. So I wanted to mess around with some of this stuff. First things first, let's figure out what our drums are going to be. All right, here's a nice basic hi-hat loop. And let's find a good kicks and snares to go in that. And let's build out a little 8-bar, 4-bar, whatever you want to call it, pattern. Like this one. And then let's find like a rim or something. Ooh, I like this one. So let's make like a nice simple loop first. One thing that I like to do with kicks is when I'm wanting to do a kick that's a little closer to a snare, like this one right here is. First, I want to offset this kick ever so slightly from the beat so it feels a little off. And then I actually want to turn it down a little bit. That way it feels more like a ghost note kick. So I got a nice simple little pattern here. Cool. Let's find some, maybe a percussion, either a percussion loop or some Foley or something to add into here. I like alternating these sometimes. The perk sounds, I love alternating these. Kind of gives it a different feel every time the snare hits. The way it kind of gives a little bit of a shift every time, and so we're not feeling so samey. One thing that you'll learn when working with a lot of samples is that when you're trying to make things feel as natural as possible, you got to do things like the volume reduction, like what I did on the kick, or changing the sounds that the snares make or the layers that the snares will have under them so they don't feel quite so samey, one-shotty as they go. So that gives that snare a little bit of differentiation each time. I'm gonna add this little bit of a stick loop. It looks like, sounds like some sticks rubbing together. So now we've been working in 120 like this whole time, which is very much not a lo-fi BPM. So this is part of what I wanted to show you with being able to work with things in different BPMs. So we're going to drop this down and you're going to see that all of these are warped. All of these samples that I have in here are warped. And what you're going to see as I pull the tempo down, it's actually going to retain the timing of everything. And so generally a lo-fi beat is around, I mean, obviously this is subject to change, but it's around like 75 to 80. So we're actually going to drop like 40 BPM. I want to drop it down to 80 and a little more of a traditional lo-fi tempo. Feels a lot more sleepy. It's a little slow. I'm going to bring it up. Let's bring it up to 85. Cool, but we are getting that sleepier lo-fi feel now. So I'm excited where this is going. So I think the next thing we need to figure out is what are our melodics going to be? And a lot of times with lo-fi, you want to get something that sounds very vintagey, maybe even vinyl-esque. And there are some things that we can do, but even if they are lifted from vinyl, like that's an even better vibe for it. And we're actually going to hop over into TrackLib, which is the sponsor for today's video. TrackLib is an online record store for sampling. It provides a growing catalog of over 100,000 original songs and multi-tracks that you can get cleared. That's the crazy part, is that you can go and download any of these and you know that you're going to be able to get these tracks cleared fast. So let's hop into TrackLib and let's try to find something that's going to work well for this style of track that we're going to be creating today. So we know we're working on a lo-fi hip hop kind of song. So I think I actually want to try to find maybe something in the jazz section, especially when I'm in that lo-fi hip hop sound. I want that like smoky lounge jazz kind of feel in a lot of my lo-fi hip hop. All right, so let's go through some of these. Oh, I do love that. Not quite sleepy enough for me. That's awesome. A nice like 70s jazz, late 70s, early 80s jazz. And it'll tell you if it's got multi-tracks in it or not. So as you can see, this one doesn't have it. So we would be sampling this as just like a 2-track, just like if it was lifted off of vinyl. But then if we go down to this one below it, let's say we love a lot of that, but we don't want the drums. We have the multi-tracks here, and so we can just grab the pieces that we want. But I think we're going to keep looking through some of these to try to find the right sound for us today. Oh, I love this one. And it's just a 2-track, so let's grab this one. And it's as easy as clicking, downloading. There we go. So we know this song's in E minor, so that's going to help us figure some stuff out later when it comes to building out the rest of the track and finding some other samples to work with it. And before we hop back into Ableton, if you want to check out TrackLib on your own, check out the link in my description for 30 free download credits on tracklib.com. And just to note, when you click that link to sign up for your free trial, you will need to input a payment method, but it will not charge you until the end of your free trial period. So feel free to cancel if that's something that you don't want. It won't take any of the credits away from you. Once again, thank you TrackLib for sponsoring this video. Now let's hop back into Ableton and start messing around with this track. So we're going to just drag and drop and load in this track we got from TrackLib. Now, sometimes these will just go right in and you can see it added warp markers and everything, and it's got it on a tempo. But I don't necessarily think it's going in the right place. I think the way I'm going to want to use this one is I actually want to use it in a program that's built into Ableton called Simpler. And what we're going to do with Simpler is we're going to drag in the song into Simpler, and that's going to allow us to then make slices of it. Then we're going to be able to play it like almost like we're chopping samples on like an MPC. I also want to lower the sensitivity a little bit. All right, there's some cool parts in there that I want to like re-trigger. I'm going to go in and find some of these spots that I want to add markers to. So I want that boo-doo-doo-doo. All right, I think we have some cool chops. Now it's time to figure out like what order we're going to play these in. I've kind of like did a mishmash and I changed our tempo a little bit because I found a nice chop. And that fits a little bit better in like the 115 range, I think. Let's see how it feels. So I think that feels really cool. Here's the thing, we're gonna try and track it real quick. I feel like we have a really good A section. Now we need to figure out like a nice B section, maybe like a verse. Yeah, that's great. Double on the A section and then a double on the B section. And within those, we have kind of two different beginnings and endings from every 4 bars. So we have a good 8-bar loop for the A and a good 8-bar loop for the B section, and then a good amount of variation in between all of those. I think I want to make this piano sample sound a little extra sampley. So let's add some RC20 onto it and see how this kind of feels. And at RC20, we're going to cut out a little bit of the low end so that when we add the bass, it's not going to get in the way and fight with the bass guitar that's in the sample. That makes it sound a little more lifted straight from vinyl, just to get that age to it a little bit more. Now we're going to use samples for the bass. Let me show you how to do that. We have some bass samples here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're going to just grab our notes and move them around, or we can grab one note and then pitch it around to make more sense of it in the context. So we're probably going to work with that first. This is an F sharp and we need it to be an E, so we're going to drop it down a whole step. We're probably going to follow a similar pattern to the notes that we chose in the sample chop. Boom, 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 boom. I have a tendency when I'm doing bass notes to try to sing the pitch because it always helps me like figure out where I'm transposing everything to. Now, sometimes basses can be a little finicky. So if you notice, it's not quite in tune because obviously it's like warping it to not be exactly perfect. So we need to bring this down the microtone side. Kind of use our ears to figure out like when it's in tune. Now we're going to do the side chaining kickstart for that. I'm going to have it set to audio and I'm going to have it read off of the kick channel. And now we're going to also do that to the sample. And something I want to change is right now we have it set to trigger, which means when we hit a note, it's just going to play forever. I want it to stop whenever I lift my finger, so we're going to set that to gate. We're actually going to duplicate that channel because I like the way the trigger feels right now, but I want the gate to be more for the verse. I just have to make sure that because I set it to gate, that everything now makes sense and it's being held long enough. Now we just need to go through and add all the bells and whistles. Something I do like to do is making impacts out of like synth one-shots. So here's a cool synth one-shot. I'm going to take that. I'm going to add some hybrid reverb to it, which is an Ableton plugin I really like because it's half convolution reverb, half algorithmic reverb. So you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. And then I like to add some echo to it as well. Now we just got to repitch it around to make it fit the key. I like doing this for the reason of you can change the pitch for different sections. Like we have here, the A section and the B section. The synth one shot is going to be a different note depending on what section we're going into, which gives it a nice little bit of variation as well. Versus when we're going into the B section. It's a nice change. And when you're working with samples, it's all about trying to keep the variation there so that it doesn't feel so static. A thing I also love to do is add a nice offhand perk or snare. A lot of times in hip hop, you'll hear this as like a tiny snare. I love to do it with a really muted percussion sound like this. And the last thing we're going to add is a little bit of pad for some space and some ambience kind of sounds. Some nice warm vinyl running over the whole thing to give it that extra layer of vibiness. And then just a little bit of a pad. And another way we can make a pad is by using a one shot and then adding something like spectral time to it. We also want to add probably some really long reverb to that as well. So I'm going to grab one of my personal favorites, Valhalla Vintage. Let's make this way too long. Grab the reverb tail on that and the feedback on the delay and make this just stupid long. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to print that. So we're going to freeze that track and then we're going to flatten. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to reverse it. And we're going to also have it double as its own little pad like the whole time. We're just gonna bury that in the background where it's more of just like a nice ambience to add. So after a little bit of mixing, here is the finalized track. And that's our full song. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for TrackLib for providing the sample. If you want to try out TrackLib, check out the link in the description for 30 free download credits. If you got anything out of this, please show some love in the comments, or if I missed something, or maybe you want me to talk about something else, please drop those in the comments so I can better answer your questions or make a video about it. While you're down there, drop a like and a subscribe. And if you're new to Ableton Live and you want to maybe check out some ways to get into Ableton Live for beginners, here's another video right over here. It's going to help you do that. I'll see you in the next one.